How many tomato plants do I really have? Are they countable? Well, down here they are. But up in Wyoming, I usually grow about 40 different types of tomatoes in any given season. There are some that I just always do. I always love them. And then there's all those ones I have to try. People give me seeds. I buy seeds. People give me little starts that they have extra of. But I love it. Look at that. That's atomic. That is one of my favorite, well, probably my favorite small tomato. Other than Suncatcher, I think is one that's a little orange one. That's really a nice one too. But these ones start out green and purple. And when they're ready, they have stripes of orange and yellows and reds. They are spectacular. You get them from Baker Seeds. Well, lunchtime, and we are having tomato soup and grilled cheeses. It's a great combination. I had a lot of ripe tomatoes, and I'm going to show you how I made my homemade tomato soup, how I made my roux to thicken up the tomato soup, and I hope you enjoy it. So we're starting with things from the garden. We have lots of basil that we're going to chop up, and these are not onions. These are actually garlic that I grew from little boblets, so they haven't got big enough to make the cloves, but you can always tell the difference between garlic and an onion. See how flat that leaf is? I mean, it's bent, but see, right there is an onion leaf. It's hollow inside. You can always tell the difference. All you have to do is bite into them and you'll be able to tell the difference too. I went out and got a few little stalks of celery for my celery plants, and I'm going to chop all of those up. And I'm putting in the stalk and the leaves in there. Now, if you don't like the leaves, just do the stalks. That's totally up to you. But I wanted to use things out of my garden because we're going to go home. Now, I put in a half a stick of butter, and it's melting. I'm going to add all of my vegetables into that. And I'm chopping up my garlic. You could literally chop up even all the leaves, but I don't need that much garlic, so I'm going to let that garlic sit for about 10 minutes because it improves the flavor. I'm going to chop up the leaves from some basil. Plus, I've decided to use all that basil that was on the tray from yesterday when I was dehydrating some, and I was oven drying that part. And so I'm just going to set that over to the side. And then I have some green onions. And these were actually just skinny green onions I bought from the store. And they're the size of leeks now. And so I'm going to chop those up and put them in there also. And then we have to, of course, pick out some tomatoes to add in there. Now, I will take out any bad spots on the tomatoes. But basically, I'm just rinsing them off real quick before I start to chop them. And they're all going into the pan. And I have a big stock pot. And so I'm just going to mix them all together. Now you have a couple options right here. Now you could just add water to it. You could add a vegetable broth to it, a chicken broth to it. I'm adding chicken broth just because that's how I like my homemade tomato soup. But none of it is right or wrong. And of course then I'll add some salt and pepper to it. If you didn't have garlic cloves, you could always add garlic salt. You could add regular onions in there. Whatever you have in your garden, add to it. Now, it's been cooking for a while. I wanted it to get to a really hard boil. Now, I'm going to turn it down and just let it simmer more for about an hour, really. And you can see all those beautiful herbs and vegetables in there. Now, if I was back in Wyoming, I have a food mill there. And I could send it through the food mill, but I don't have one of them down in Arizona. So I'm just going to blend everything up in my food processor. And so I'm just going to put some of it in there at a time. I'll puree it, and then I'll get some more. So I do the entire batch. And it doesn't really take too long. Not all the leaves will chop up, but the onions will chop up. The garlic will chop up, celery will chop up, but the basil, it will chop some, but not all of it. But that is totally okay because I like basil floating in my tomato soup. If you had a food mill, you could send it through and all you're going to have is soup. So there it is, and I'm going to wash up my stock pot. I'm going to add butter, and I have about 6 tablespoons of butter. And around 1/4 cup of flour. And this is how you make your roux. And I'm going to mix that together. And the burner is on low right now. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the soup to it. And mix again. Now I want to mix it enough so that I don't have lumps of flour. So we're going to add some to it, and I'll start mixing it. And it incorporates really easily. And so that's always a great thing. And I think I'm going to add a little bit more because it's thickening up so fast. And if you didn't want all the pieces in, you could use a strainer. So let's mix it one more time, and then I'll show you how you can use the strainer to get like your basil leaves out and tomato seeds that you may not want. I never mind that stuff. And so I just leave it in there, but some people don't. And so you can just put a strainer along the top, dump it in there, and then use your spoon or your spatula and just let it slowly drain. Totally up to you. It just depends on how much particles of plant material you want, I guess. I love pieces of basil. So I'm just letting it start to boil, and I'm going to add 1/4 cup of sugar. It'll just help with the acidity of the tomatoes. And so I still want it to be sharp, but not overpowering. And so I'm going to mix that up, and I will just let that stay on low for a while until it's time for our lunch. And it makes a beautiful soup. I hope you try it. So it's a major tomato day. But with the fresh tomatoes, I made homemade tomato soup with basil, celery, onions, garlic, all from the garden. So Joe's going to try the tomato soup. I made grilled cheese to go along with it because that is a staple with tomato soup. So Joe, try it out.
It's good. Another good one today, baby.
He'll probably put crackers in there because he likes soup with crackers. But I am going to dip my grilled cheese. But always like, subscribe, share with the world. And look for the other tomato videos that are all up today. The tomato pie is in the oven as we speak. As always, like, subscribe, share with the world. Video number 3 for the day. Next, video number 4. It is a green tomato pie. It tastes kind of like an apple pie.